When was the last time you spoke with Cassian Andor? The very worst thing you can do right now is bore me.
You're not gonna believe me anyway, are you?
No. I suppose not. She's all yours, Dr. Gorst.
You could call upon the seas to outclean your enemies. Would you watch the innocent casualties? I bet you'd be safely at home, shielded from this bloody control, drinking from the power in your hand, soaring through time and space. Cuts the air without a trace. Don't look back to see their face. The killer goes dirty. Death from the sky. Whistle of howling wind sings sirens into the night.
Oh, ho, ho, ho. Greetings, Bucketheads. Mavar Tigar. Welcome to the 181st incalculably inscrutable ISB evading episode of Mandovision. Nargai Tom, and thank you so much for checking out this small, independent Star Wars podcast. Remember, the best way to find us is, of course, on social media. We are at Mando_Vision on Twitter and Instagram. You can email the show, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Please be sure to like, subscribe, share, and follow this podcast with all the Mandalorians in your covert. How is everyone doing? We are back for another exciting installment of Andor Wednesday, which doesn't quite roll off the tongue the way I want it to, but maybe we'll workshop that before season 2 comes out. We'll see what's happening there. Just another gripping installment of the show. As I made the metaphor, the reference, the comparison last week, that they just ratchet that tension just like a notch or two, just slowly making it more tense every time you watch it. And then the way they open this episode with Bix and Deidre Marrow engaging in what would be the precursor to what I can only imagine was an unbearable torture sequence. And oh man, we really go for it in this episode. It again, we draw a sort of an end point in this 3-episode arc, and we sort of also end the second act of this first season here, as these final 3 episodes that we're gearing up for promise to be even more intense, even more action oriented, and I can only imagine what awaits us in these final 3 episodes of the first season here for Andor. It's going to be intense. So really, really excited to get into this episode with you all. I do have to do. Hey, listen. I am a fallible human person. I make mistakes. Sometimes things slip by, and I'm not. I miss things, and I own that, and that's why I have to admit to 2 omissions in this episode. I want a little bit of oversight. Got to go back and correct a couple of things. On my first viewing of last week's episode, one of the actors in the scene looked familiar, but that happens a lot on this show. The cast of Andor, it's a largely a large cast of British actors. I enjoy British television, so I just assume I've seen them in something, whether it's Game of Thrones or Luther or something in the middle. I'm always feeling, well, I probably saw him in something. I did not catch that Duncan Powell had returned to play Melshi. who we met initially in Rogue One as one of the troopers who goes to Scarif with Andor and the rest of the Rogue One team. So this is obviously their first encounter. They get to serve prison time together, which leads me to believe that Melshi will make it out with Andor when the inevitable prison escape begins. So I wanted to kind of get that out there. Yes, indeed, in case you didn't notice it, in case it slipped by you and you weren't sure, that is Melshi from Rogue One, who is working the table with Andor. He gets a lot more screen time in this particular episode, so it probably jumps out to you more in this one, particularly because I think they use his name more too, which also helps. When they use names, it really does help cement things. But yeah, I figured that out on the second viewing of last week's episode, and I was like, oh, darn it. So I had to make a note of that real quick. And then the other omission, a correction. Sometimes I get a little, I can get that little narrow laser beam focus on something. And I'm like, ooh, I want it to be this. I want it to be this. Because I like it when Star Wars goes back and brings back some of the old expanded universe stuff. And sometimes that can be a blind spot for me. And this was a major blind spot for me. We had seen, in small doses, sort of the head of the ISB. And I'd like to think I'm a fairly tuned in Star Wars fan more often than not, but I got so focused on the idea that they maybe they'd bring in the Yasards and let them head up the ISB, knowing in the back of my head it was in there. I just like I said, I got so excited about the idea of bringing in Director Yasard that I totally forgot that it's actually Admiral Yularen is in charge of the ISB, and I did go and confirm that with various sources, aka the internets, that confirmed that yes, indeed, that is Yularen, who, if you're doing our Star Wars: The Clone Wars rewatch episodes with us, you know who he is, and Dave Filoni has sort of set all these things in motion, and Dave Filoni, says he's at the table in the Death Star, he's in A New Hope, so yes, I was hoping for a little wish fulfillment, even though the answer was staring me right in the face. So that's out there. Like I said, mistakes were made, but I own those mistakes. And now we move forward and we get into the next episode of Andor, because it's kind of a turning point episode in many, many senses. Like I said, this 3-episode arc kind of comes to an end, and it acts as sort of like our dividing line for the end of the second act of the show. I can only imagine what the third act of season 1 has in store for us. Holy smokes. Let's go ahead and get into our particulars. So Andor, season 1, episode 9, Nobody's Listening. Original air date today, November 2nd, 2022. Written once again by Beau Willimon, directed by Toby Haynes, and just doing a phenomenal job in these episodes here. Toby Haynes is really setting a dark, atmospheric, moody tone for the scenes that he's shooting here, particularly on Narkina, when you're in ISB headquarters. Just a lot of atmosphere in all these scenes, and think about what's going on Ferrix and the way that atmosphere has changed from the original from the first 3 episodes of the series. There's a completely different vibe to Ferrix now that the Imperial presence is there and stronger, and basically suppressing freedom. So, and Toby's really, I think, bringing that to life in a really strong visual way. Our plot for this week's episode: under intense scrutiny while in prison, Cassian makes allies and plans an impossible escape. Our principal cast this week: Diego Luna is Cassian Andor, Genevieve O'Reilly is Mon Mothma, Andy Serkis is Kino Loy, and those are sort of our principal players. Denise Goff as Deidre Marrow, our other big player for the week, and everyone just again bringing their A game. I think this is the first episode where we get not even a glimpse of Stellan Skarsgård as Luthen Rael. So we're really kind of pulling back from that element of it, even though that storyline is very strongly felt in Deidre's pursuit of who she's calling Axis. The buyer is also the word used a lot in this episode. So those are sort of our principles, and now we are ready to dive into the episode proper, and you know what that means. It's time. Strap on your buckets. Let's go.
What's important for our purposes here today is that the massacre of the Dizenites was broadcast and recorded as proof of mission. They make a sound as they die, a sort of choral agonized pleading. It's quite unlike anything anyone had ever heard before. There were 3 communications officers monitoring the documentation, and they were found hours later huddled together in various states of emotional distress in a crawl space beneath the ship's bridge. We've taken the recordings and modified them slightly, layering, adjusting, and we've found a section of what we believe are primarily children, which has its own particular effect.
So how freaking cruel does that sound? That the Empire has figured out a way to weaponize the death cries of an alien species, and like there's a party, at least for me, when I'm watching, I'm like, maybe this is like this is like some kind of like psychological warfare they're conducting right here. They're just trying to scare Bix into spilling her guts, like everything she knows about the buyer, about Cassian, and all these things. I was like, this couldn't possibly be a real story. This is absolutely horrifying. No, not so fast, my friends. When the Empire has this world, the galaxy's scariest pair of Beats headphones, and they plop them onto your head, and we as the audience don't get to hear the sound. I think that makes it even more terrifying about how real it is, because you just get to watch the wonderful actor playing Bix emote, just have it all written across her face, the absolute terror and horror that she's being exposed to. And again, the first bunch of episodes of this show have been so interesting to me as we've sort of explored the Empire on almost like a bureaucratic level. Sort of like almost like the paper pushers and the pencil, whatever, the desk jockeys of the Empire, right? No. Now we're getting into like the nitty gritty of the ISB as sort of an analog for the SS in old Nazi Germany, right? This is terrifying, scary stuff. Deidre Marrow just going for full gusto to get the information she needs to protect and defend the Empire in the best way that she sees fit, which is to just destroy the minds of people. She did it earlier with oh gosh, what was the guy's name? I already forgot it. Pack. She got Pack with that. We saw the remnant of what shape he was in at the end of last week's episode. Now she's going to do the same thing to Bix with the assistance of Dr. Gorst. And he's talking about what the Empire did to the Dizon Frey, an alien species who had the audacity to not be super stoked when their planet was chosen for like an Imperial refueling depot. Just holy smokes. And what's sort of neat is, neat's not the right word, but I totally lost my train of thought by saying the wrong word right there. Holy smokes. But I like that we're seeing, it's interesting to me that we're exploring the different methodologies of torture that the Empire seems to have under its sway. It's not, when we were first exposed to Star Wars, like what did we have? We had a torture droid with a scary needle. And that was scary because like, who likes needles? Especially long, super long ones, super pointy, super sharp. Needles, not a fan. And, we never really know. I mean, we assumed the needle went in the arm, but for all I know, they're poking that needle in your eye. And then they do something similar to Han Solo on Bespin. More needles, sparks in that one too. This is sort of a different thing. And, we got a little taste of other methods of extracting information from Saw Gerrera in Rogue One with Borgullet. And this might be the most horrifying thing that we've seen thus far in the Empire's arsenal of information extraction. And again, I use the word interesting cautiously, but the information they get from this particular method, they believe it to be true because of like the psychological trauma that the person's put through, that they are completely, according to the Empire's research, apparently, they are compelled to tell the truth. So they're not lying, they're not spinning tales. They believe there's a veracity to the information they extract with this process. And it's just terrifying to think that they have more people like Dr. Gorst in their employ and are finding new ways to extract information from potential rebels. And it just, holy smokes. We do get a little bit more background information. Deidre Marrow has been hard at work here, putting the pieces together, trying to paint the picture, trying to put the pieces together of the puzzle of who is the mysterious buyer, who is Axis. And we learned from the interrogation of Pac that we didn't see, but she kind of tells us the goods here. It sounds like Clea was the one who recruited Pac initially, got him the fractal comm unit. And then after only one meeting with Axis, quote unquote, everything was kind of turned over to Bix, and so they know that Bix has met with Luthen, aka Axis, aka the buyer, at least 6 times face to face. So she has the information, and it also seems that they've deduced that she is also the strongest link to Cassian Andor as well. Another element of this, when they go back, when Deidre goes back to Coruscant, to ISB headquarters, and is giving the report to Major Partagas, talking about how at first one of the other supervisors sort of questions, like, why didn't you question his mother? Why didn't you get her involved? And I mean, she just puts it out there. Like, A, she's old and frail, and it probably wouldn't survive the process. But also, she's bait. Like, if Andor's going to come back to Ferrix, it's going to be for her. So Marva is now unknowingly the bait that the Empire wants to use to catch Andor, should he make his way back to Ferrix. Again, they still have no idea that they already have him in their possession. So that will be... I can't wait to explore the bureaucratic red tape of that situation when I can only assume by the time Deidre Marrow and the ISB deduce that they have Andor in custody already, will be right about the time that the escape is happening on Narkina 5. It's sort of where I'm going with that train of thought. But a lot of interesting stuff here. We spent a lot of time with Deidre Marrow in this episode. We go back and forth between the 3 main elements of the story. We're with Marrow. We are with Cassian on Narkina 5, and we're with Mon Mothma a lot in this episode too. There's a lot of really interesting Mon Mothma stuff in this episode, and ISB stuff too. Like, this is definitely an episode that makes sure that you're paying attention to names and things that were mentioned in earlier episodes, because if you weren't, you might sort of be like, wait, what are they talking about now? Good idea to keep... I like this show with captions on because then I'm reading the name as well as hearing it, so it's sticking in my brain a bit better. So when they start talking about things later in this episode, you're like, oh my gosh, they're talking about that situation that they're trying to get Saw Gerrera involved in last week. But we'll get to that. We'll talk about that element of the show in a little tiny bit here. I want to talk a little bit now about Mon Mothma situation in this episode. So let's do that. So the Mon Mothma portion of this episode I found to be very, very interesting because it's a lot of it's a lot of Mon versus elements of the show, right? You have Mon versus the Senate, Mon versus Perrin and her daughter once again, Mon and Vel, then you got Mon and Take-Homa. A lot of stuff going on for Mon Mothma's portion of this episode. Particularly interesting was seeing her in the Senate. I loved getting to explore that. We've seen her addressing the Senate before, but there was the situation on Aldhani that happened. So when the senators were rushing out and ignoring her, you sort of understand the whys of that, because there was all of a sudden there was an attack against the Empire, right? Someone had lashed out against the Empire in an unheard of way at that point. This time you get to see the senators as I think as we truly perceive them to be, which is just not interested in helping people, not interested in the betterment of the galaxy. They have no problem with the Emperor and his what Mon has termed overreaching when it comes to the resentencing of prisoners and all these different tactics that are all the signs of a totalitarian regime. And you're witnessing senators turning the lights off in their dioceses and leaving the platform. They don't want to hear more of Mon Mothma on her soapbox and things of that nature. It really speaks to like the sort of fundamental lack of any the illusion of democracy in Palpatine's empire. But it's also sort of a callback to We just talked about it in our episode where we talked about some of the Dooku episodes for Tales of the Jedi, and the corruption of the senators and the corruption of the Senate, and how that disillusioned Count Dooku into eventually leaving the Jedi Order, and the frustration of the senators like Mon Mothma and Bail Organa and those few, like the ones we glimpsed at Yavin 5 in Rogue One when they were too scared to take the chance and launch the attack on Scarif. I think you really start to see and feel why it was that these senators feel this way. They are so marginalized. They are so minimalized that they have no significance, no importance. Like they talk about, they want to do things the old way. They want the diplomacy. They want politics to prevail and to sue for peace diplomatically, even though it's not a realistic possibility. So you see Mon Mothma's mounting frustration, and I think we have to get to the point with Mon where an armed rebellion is on the table. Again, she's always been portrayed as something of a pacifist from a fairly pacifist planet, but Mon's going to have to make the realization that something has to galvanize the galaxy, right? And in Star Wars, it's Scarif, it's the Death Star plans, it's all these things, and we're not there yet. And even Mon is at this point in her time with the rebellion, I don't think she quite understands the grasp of what Luthen is trying to teach her, but also show when it comes to the resolve needed to battle the Empire. She's not there yet. But seeing senators just turn off their lights and leave while she's addressing, oof, that's gotta sting. That's gotta be harsh. And then she comes home, finds out her cousin's around. We're like, who's her cousin? It's not super surprising that it's revealed to be Vel. Vel is as was sort of alluded to last week's episode, the rich girl who ran away from her family. So not too surprising that she's Chandrillan and is connected to Mon Mothma, and that they're all in this sort of together now, sort of a family affair, doing this business with Luthen. She's returned. She's all done up, looks fancy, looking like the rich girl that Cinda believes her to be. And also very interesting that Vel uses Cinta's line against Mon Mothma when like the rebellion comes first, the fight comes first, the cause comes first, we take what's left. So I thought that was an interesting way to use that line, for Vel to take that line that was used against her and use it against Mon. Really kind of another shot. Another shot in this episode too is Mon's daughter Lita just being just so snarky and rude to her mother. Talking about how her dad lets her do whatever she wants. Well, that's great. We like to hear that. We love and spoiled children on this podcast. We don't. We really don't. So again, you're seeing the sort of the struggle that she has at home. And again, when Vel comes home and she thinks she has someone to talk to, someone who would understand her frustrations with Luthen and what's going on with the rebellion, she finds that falls on deaf ears. Vel's not having any of it. Vel's in for the cause. She's in for a penny and for a pound. So Mon's doubts and recriminations, they weigh not on Vel. And Vel basically says, "Hey, stiff upper lip, let's go. We got fightings to do." So that's all very interesting stuff. It's also interesting when they have the dinner sequence together, because then Perrin gets involved, taking more shots, not only at Mon but also at Vel. Sort of talking about how Vel missed her chance to be settled down with a man by this point, and again, we can get into the whole misogynistic element of that. Vel's sexuality. There's a lot to kind of pick apart there, but again, Perrin sort of going after these very traditional ideologies is not doing him any favors in our eyes as an audience, I don't think. So that's a sort of an interesting element as well. And then the fact we find out that Perrin has been making very disparaging remarks about Mon Mothma to their daughter, to Lyda, talking about how Tay Colma's been coming around the house more often, and that's your mom's old boyfriend, blah, blah, blah. Just really nasty stuff going on in that house. Passive-aggressive snarkiness. It's just ooh. And Mon's just there for the appearances, right? You got to keep these appearances up. You'd like to think she could get her house in order, but it's just not going to happen. They seem like they are. Like we talked about in the very first episode of the show, they seem like they're very entrenched in what the Empire presents to the elite. They seem to be very much into that lifestyle. I think they would that Perrin and Lyta would both be loath to not have that lifestyle at their fingertips. So the idea of having to go on the run, to go into hiding, to support a rebellion, to upturn the Empire, something dramatic will have to happen for them to have their ideologies shaken at such a fundamental level. And we'll see what the course of action that all plays out in. We will find out. I suspect, I sort of think you'll get more out of the Perrin character at some point. We'll start to find out there are more depths to him at some point. But we have to figure out what it's going to take to prod him into action. What's going to prod him into realizing what's going on in the galaxy is not good. But something will have to shake him to his fundamental core for that to happen. And I really only base that idea on the fact that the actor playing Perrin, I believe it's Alistair. I want to say Mackenzie. I might have it backwards though. I might have it mixed up. Is a very talented actor. So why not let him get to do something more than just be like this pompous butt? I mean, he's doing a good job of it. Don't get me wrong. But I'd like to see us explore some more of that dynamic. That could be a lot of fun. It'd be very, very interesting. But I want to shift. In case you haven't noticed, I'm saving all of Narkina 5 for the end of the episode. I'm going to talk about all of that at once because there's a lot going on. So let's talk about Cyril Karn's involvement in this episode. Yeah, stalkery? Yeah, I think so. It's a bit much, right? Yeah, he's stalking Dedra Meero to ISB headquarters, and we see him in a very different light. Is he fanatical? Is he crazed? Is he obsessed? It's very creepy. It's very weird. It's kind of uncomfortable, and I don't think Meero's quite sure what to do about it. She threatens him, says he could be arrested, says he could be detained, but she makes no action to do so. And I want to sort of get into. I want them to explore why that is. If she's just giving this individual a chance, like maybe she knows he's been wronged on some level, so she's trying to give him a chance to kind of move on and rebound with this second chance that he was granted. Cyril achieved a promotion from what they said about him after their meeting last time. It got him a promotion at work, which made his mother very, very happy. We also got to explore some more time with Cyril's mom, and that relationship is so interestingly bizarre as well. You know, Cyril talks about how she snoops in his room, goes into his private box. He has ways of knowing these things, and then she talks about him and makes him almost like a commodity. She talks about her return on an investment with him, and it's not until he relays the information about the promotion that she seems to be shows any sort of genuine affection for him for the first real time on the show, and how her Uncle Harlow will be so proud that he's gotten this recognition at work and a promotion. But again, it's not what he wants. He's still fixated on Cassian, and is a little of that fixation rubbing off now on Dedra Meero because he sort of sees her as a kindred spirit in this pursuit of imperial justice, of imperial order. I'm fascinated by what's going to end up happening with this. I think there's a lot of different directions for Karn's character to go, and whether that leads him to the ISB, which would be interesting if not a tad predictable, is at least suggested in the episode. But I sort of like the element of Cyril Karn as this wild card element that may actually end up getting in the way of the ISB's pursuit of Cassian Andor and in his own pursuit for like a personal vengeance against Cassian for the perceived wrongs that Andor has done against him. So again, there's a lot up in the air here, and one of my favorite elements of the show is like none of these characters are on a clear path, right? They're we don't know really what's going to happen. The only character that we know lives through this show is Cassian because he has a fate already lined up for himself. So what the final fate of Cyril Karn, Dedra Meero, Bix, Marva, Mon Mothma's family, Luthen Rael, Clea, all these characters that we're meeting in the show, Vel, Cinta, all of them, we don't know their fates, but we're getting invested in them, much like Cyril's mom is invested in her son for financial gain, I guess. We're not invested in that way. We're invested in a storytelling manner. So I really enjoy that they've gotten us to follow these characters, and we want to see what their paths are. And they're not clear cut. They're not predetermined. We don't know what their ultimate fates will be, and I think that really adds a lot to the show. In a show where we know the main character will make it out, only to meet his death in Rogue One, but there's so many characters in the show. Oh, and again, we know Mon Mothma is going to make it out too. Spoilers on that one. But so many other characters, so many of our supporting cast, part of this amazing ensemble they've brought together, we don't know the fates of. And these final 3 episodes, ooh, there could be a lot of sad people at the end of this first season. We will have to see. We will have to see because, again, Andor does have a path. And will he be more invested in the rebellion by the end of this first season? We're going to find out because right now that's still not even looking like a sure thing at the moment. But yes, Cyril Karn, total creeper. But what level will they take it to next is sort of where I want to know. There's another interesting element to the ISB element to the ISB portion of this story, and it's that they've captured a pilot. And it turns out to be one of this guy Krieger's men, who was referenced in last week's episode. That's what Luthen Rael was doing, meeting with Saw Gerrera. He wanted Saw to support Krieger in this planned attack against the power station on Spellhouse. Well, one of Krieger's men has now been captured near Steergard, and Gorst was used to extract the information from this pilot. And now the ISB knows about the imminent attack on Spellhouse. So it seems like Saw Gerrera was correct in his assessment on Krieger. And he's an ox of a man, slow-witted and stupid. and apparently he's brought in the wrong people because that guy was caught, detained by the Empire, questioned, interrogated, and spilled his guts. And now the ISB will be planning a counteraction. They will be there to anticipate any rebel plot against the power station on Spellhouse. So that's going to be very, very interesting to see take hold. And how invested in supporting that is Luthen Rael, because that will put him in a very bad position as well if the ISB will be waiting for an imminent attack on Spellhouse. So a lot of big things happening there. And again, these are some of those details that is why I like to watch the show with the subtitles. Because, again, you hear those names. You're like, Spellhouse. Boom. I remember that. I don't know. Something that I just need a little extra visual aid. So reading the words helps. Anyways. But yeah. So a plot in place. The ISB ready to spring into action and catch themselves some rebels. I need to backtrack for a moment real quick here and go back to Mon Mothma because we didn't get to talk about Mon and Tay Kolma discussing the finances. Tay is in there, and he's trying to clean up a bit of the mess that Mon Mothma had made, trying to shuttle funds around to support Luthen Rael's growing rebel network. And it's kind of gnarly. There's a big $400,000 credit. No, 400,000 credit missing that looks very strange and suspicious. They don't know how to replace that, and when the Imperial auditors come checking, it'll be a very big red flag. And Kolma's not quite sure how to get this past the auditors unless they were able to make a massive deposit. And that is going to force Mon Mothma to meet with a very unscrupulous member of Chandrilan society, a Davo Skulden. Who is not a banker in her estimation, but a thug. So again, the criminal element of Chandrilan society will be meeting with Mon Mothma, and again, she's sort of backed into a corner here, and Mon's going to have to get her hands dirty, and that is something that she's not accustomed to. So I'm very much looking forward to that element of the storyline taking place and shaping as well. As again, Mon still believes she can do things above board, keep her hands clean. Not be in the fight so much. That's not the case. And she's about to learn what she's going to have to do to protect herself, to protect her family. Because if an Imperial audit was to find all that money missing, they're going to be in a lot of trouble. And it's going to be real bad for Mon Mothma, where that 400,000 credits to go unaccounted for. Unexplained sums of money missing, and those numbers would definitely get the ISB over to her house in a hurry. All right, I think that has us mostly caught up, so it's time to shift our focus to what's going on Narkina 5, and we'll do that right after this.
How many shifts do you have left?
217.
So, tell me what you know before you go.
You've been warned.
You think they care what we say?
You're on your own with this.
Why? You think they're listening? You think they care enough to make an effort?
Like you would know.
I know this. They don't need to care. All they need to do is turn this floor on twice a day and keep their numbers rolling. Why bother listening to us? We are nothing to them. Melch is right. We're cheaper than droids and easier to replace.
Good luck to you.
You think they care what we say? Nobody's listening. Nobody. How many guards on each level?
Oh, so Narkina 5. So much happening on Narkina 5 in this episode. And I sort of speculated a little bit last week if Andor was maybe sort of falling victim to the menial rewards of the Imperial prison complex system. But no, that's not the case. I was like a lot of other people. I'm not taking credit for this. He's biding his time. He's got a plan. He's trying to figure things out, get a lay of the land, and formulate the best way to attack this system, to figure out how to get out of this prison. And he's not alone. He's made enough. He's got enough allies in the prison, if you will, that are contacting other people, that are talking on other levels of the complex, trying to get some sort of information going on. Again, that's one of the big assets that the Empire has going for it in this prison, is that the prisoners are all isolated. They can't communicate with each other. So something happens on one level of the base or one side of the base I shouldn't say base, but from the complex. They don't know about it. Information is isolated and hard to come by. And when there is information, it goes rapidly out of control with rumor, speculation, idle gossip, those kind of things. So when we catch up with Andor initially in this episode, he's working at his table, he's with his crew, they're doing what they're supposed to do, they're meeting their quota. You still don't want to get shocked by the floor, right? You still don't have your magic snow boots on, so you want to avoid that. But he's making inroads. They've figured out that the lift isn't connected to the system. So if they were to be on the lift, they wouldn't get shocked. And they're looking for weaknesses. And Cassian's cutting a pipe over in the Star Wars bathroom. Get to see a Star Wars bathroom. We're going to see Star Wars bathrooms in this show. We're breaking all kinds of trends, if you will, for Star Wars. We're seeing all the things, and it's been really, really interesting to do. And Cassian is trying to get information, and he knows that Kino is one of these guys who has a lot of the information that he needs, but he can't get it, right? Like Kino, played by Andy Serkis, he's been there a long time. He as sort of like the warden who supports this system of the prisoners, keeping everybody in check and on point, just doing their menial tasks. He's not willing to share that information. He thinks the Empire is listening. He thinks the Empire is monitoring all the communications. And from that clip we just played, Cassian is sort of like I don't know if I want to use the voice of reason necessarily, but he has a unique understanding of the Empire's arrogance, of their sense of self-importance, as we've discussed throughout our coverage of the show. They don't care. They're ambivalent because they think they are better, that they are bigger than these people, and it doesn't matter. And he says it. All they do is turn that floor on, and that regulates things. So why bother listening? Why bother eavesdropping? It's a waste of their time and resources, right? These people are nobodies, and Kino hasn't bought into that. But we start to see Kino crack a little bit in this episode. This is a really strong episode for our wonderful supporting cast. And now that we're spending more time with the prisoners here on Narkina 5, Melshi in particular, a familiar face that we know from Rogue One. We're starting to kind of puzzle some of the things out, like the efforts that are being made, the sort of resistance happening within the prison. But Kino's one of these guys. He has a little bit of his own he believes he sort of holds his own fate in his hands, right? He has like his 217 shifts left before he's free, and like that's his goal, that's his end game. He wants to get out. He's going to do his shifts. He's going to put his head down, do his shifts, and get out. That's it. And anybody who's going to get in the way of that, he's not going to help them. He's not going to support them. You know, it's prison. You're kind of in there for yourself. Cassian's trying to get out, but he's going to take as many people out as he can because he knows that he can't do it alone, right? So everyone has to be able to help in this. What starts to crack Kino, though, is this idea that something's happened on level 2. There's been some sort of incident. You know, we talked about how I think it's Tag has a hand signal going on through the windows to a friend on the other side of the base, other side of the complex, and they're passing information along as best they can with these hand signals. And then a passing shift, on a shift change, the two shifts pass each other. And they're like, hey, did you hear about, what happened on level 2? They fried everybody, 100 men dead. And they're, people start to lose it a little bit. Kino starts to crack. Melshi comes after him a little bit. And Cassian, again, with that unique understanding he has of the Empire, sort of talks Kino down. He's like, hey, we can't let the Empire know that we know anything. That's going to put us all at danger, at risk. And again, they don't know what they know. It's just what's happened, what's going on here, what's the process. But something bad has happened at the base. The prisoners are shook up now, and the Empire's trying to squash it as best they can before the other prisoners find out. And again, the Empire has the upper hand here, or Volt's not going to do much. They're other than affect productivity, right? The Empire wants to stay on schedule, on quota with whatever it is they're building. I don't think anyone's had any luck trying to figure out exactly what it is they're building. There was sort of an interesting theory going around on the internet about how one level is all about assembling these things and another level is all about taking them apart. So it's just like this crazy, weird, vicious cycle. I tend to think that they're just like Imperial stop signs that they're going to put out on a planet somewhere. I have no idea what they are. Or they're just some kind of weird gear in and at. I don't know. But there would be something very amusing about the idea that one level puts them together, another level takes them apart, and it's just this crazy, vicious cycle of life for these prisoners. It is after one shift, the old timer in the group, Olaf. He's having a bad time of things. He's been getting slower. His dexterity. He's not as nimble getting some of this work done as he used to be. And the tables are loyal, right? They don't throw him out. They try to cover for him. They try to shield him from the eyes of the Imperials, and then he's having a medical situations occurring to him at the end of one shift, and Kino and Cassian. Again, no one knows he's Cassian. He's still Kif to most of them. They're trying to aid him out, and they got to get a doctor because something bad's happening with him. And basically, we find out that Olaf's stroked out. He's not going to survive this, and the doctor keeps making these comments about how this is for the best. This is really going to be better for him in a week. Another week like this, you're all going to be wishing you got the same treatment. And again, Kino's sort of like, what are you talking about? Because the doctor guy is like, you got to get your guys under control. Now, again, the doctor, the physician, the attendant, whatever you want to call him, I don't know if he's a real doctor. He seems to be qualified in basic first aid at the very least. It is another prisoner, but instead of the orange stripes on his suit, he has blue. So that seems to indicate he's a medical personnel. And he knows more than the rest of the prisoners, and now they're trying to. Cassian and Kino are now attempting to get any information from the doctor. The doctor tells the Imperial supervisor that he needs a body bag and a trolley, so that sends him off. And now it's time for a little bit of a little heart to heart here. Getting some truth time.
They made a mistake. A man who was just released on 4 ended up back on 2 the next day. Word got out on the floor, and then they killed them all.
You need those other men there.
They're just leaving.
Now.
If he was released, you heard me.
No one's getting out, are they?
Not now. Not after this. At least your friend is free.
You two, on program now. Up, hands on your heads.
Oh, and that's not gonna do well. That shatters Kino's perceptions of what he thinks going on here at the prison. His 217 now means absolutely nothing, and he flips on a freaking dime here. Let's go ahead and check out the rest of the sequence.
Move. Let's go. Come on, let's go. Now. Let's go.
How many guards on each level?
Never more than 12.
And that is just the ratcheting of the tension even further. But now Kino's on board. It's time to make their escape because no one is getting off Narkina 5 ever. And something has to be done about it because Cassian has things to do in the galaxy. Gosh darn it. Oh, the way this episode ends is just juicy. It's so delectable. And again, this episode's really strong in the sense of just showing just how bad the Empire is. Life under the Empire is bad, bad, bad. Again, this guy Kino just wants to, whatever crime he committed, whether he did it or not, he's just going to serve his time out and get out and go back to his life, pick up whatever pieces he has left. That's not happening now. It's over. And again, watching Andy Serkis's progression with the character, how he sort of changes throughout this 45-minute long episode of the show is remarkable. And then you see the cold resolve on his face as he walks down that corridor with Cassian at the end. And it's like, yeah, all right, I get it now. I see exactly what you were saying. You were right all along, and it's time to move forward with Plan B, because Plan A sucks. Oh, and again, it's just that steady ratcheting. Just one click, 2 clicks, the tension. Click, click, click. Oh, stretched taut. My nerves frayed. Oh, it's wonderful. It's fantastic. I look so forward to Wednesdays now. I can't even tell you. And I think I have secured Wednesdays off from work for the rest of the month. So for the rest of the run of Andor. So we should be A-okay with me getting this coverage out day of, because I can't wait to watch this freaking show. I love it so gosh darn much. I have talked to you all about it before. This has got to be my favorite thing Star Wars is doing right now. And I say that as someone who is feverishly in love with The Mandalorian. And I love me some Book of Boba Fett and everything, Kenobi, all the stuff that they've done. I have been here for all of it. But something about Andor, it is scratching that itch that is right in the middle of my shoulder blades. And it feels so good. So give me more. These final 3 episodes that we're getting ready for are going to be most excellent indeed. I think that's everything I have to say about this episode for you. Let me just check my notes real quick here. Yeah, I think we're good. I think I hit everything I wanted to talk about. It's a great episode. I plan on watching it again immediately. Oh, this show's just been an absolute delight. It's just a treasure trove of joy for me, and not joy like in the way that it's so happy. It just makes me happy watching this. It really, really does. So another reminder: please make sure you're following us on social media at Mando_Vision on Twitter and Instagram. You can email the show in long form, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Make sure you're liking, subscribing, following, and sharing the show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. If you want to support the show by giving us some sweet 5-star reviews, those are truly appreciated, truly helpful. And again, we are entering the season of giving, so give some sweet 5-star reviews. We thank you in advance. And just to remind you, they really do help the small podcasts like us and so many others stand out, not get lost in the shuffle of the algorithm. And we appreciate you so much. If you'd like to help the show financially, you can do that as well. Head on over to our Patreon page, www.patreon.com/Mandovision. You can join Mandovision Nation, become I'm so messed up right now. Oh my gosh. Join Buckethead Nation. Join our fellow Mandovision maniacs, our good friends, the Aspen Hill Chody, the Batman of Bayho, Jeff Nail. Jeff's got a great podcast. Check it out, called Ringing Ear. It's really, really good. Thanks to Evil Circle, the evilest of all circles, the Squid Master General Brian Broussard, the New Jersey Devil Mark Wegemer, our very own Joker and Harley Quinn, Brian and Krista of Pariah Brewing in Baltimore, Maryland. And I will be the visiting pariah in Baltimore, Maryland in this month of November. Get ready, Buckethead Nation. Maybe we can have a pariah meetup. Wouldn't that be fun? I'll see all 3 of you who listen to the show there. Woohoo! The Beer Hop Brigadier General, Jesus Beer Hop, thank you so much. The Silent Assassin, he who should not be named. Syndicate Ram, co-host of Come On, It's Still Good. He'll be one of the 3 there. I'm betting money on it, all right? So get ready for that, pariah. Brace yourselves. All right, let's get out of here. What else I got for you? Hey, stay tuned. Andor Wednesdays, every Wednesday from here through November. And then we'll get back into some other stuff. We'll talk about that later, though. That's for another show. All right? This show can only end... This podcast can only end one way. This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.
I find that answer vague and unconvincing.